So the first piece of evidence that I want to look at is the apostles' commitment to what they otherwise would have known was a lie. The disciples would not have died for their religion if they knew it was false. And this is the argument that Pastor Ed made. This argument doesn't work. Well, he kind of made it. He didn't actually talk about martyrdom being an explicit evidence, but we're going to look at it anyway. So this argument doesn't work because they only needed to believe that their religion was true. So Muslim suicide bombers die for their false belief all the time. So dying for your faith only proves that you believed in the faith. So the other issues is that there's conflicting accounts. So the two pieces of good evidence that we have is there are many claims that the apostles died for their faith. And then Josephus, an unbiased source, talks about the death of Jesus's brother and a few others, but doesn't describe why they died. So the other issue is that the stories conflict on many of the apostles' deaths, and this kind of indicates an agenda of the church. So and you'll see that because it's like people are either lying or guessing or embellishing. They're doing something. So, and then also many of these death traditions are written hundreds of years later. So if this is evidence, it should have been written down sooner, or at least be relatively consistent. So let's see here. An improvement would have been if Josephus explicitly stated why they died, which would be for their faith in Jesus. And anyway, let's go ahead and take a look. So the apostles, like John, it was not a martyr. He died of old age. Judas died in the field after betraying Jesus in one of two ways, depending on which verses you read. Philip has a conflict. So one says he was stoned, one said he was beheaded, one says he was crucified upside down, another says he was crucified upside down with Bartholomew. So this is not evidence. This is 6 different conflicting accounts. How is that? That doesn't prove anything. It's the same with Bartholomew. There's like 6 or 7 different conflicting accounts of how he died. Matthew, there's a conflict. Simon, there's a conflict. Matthias, it doesn't even say. James, a son of Alphaeus, or brother of Jesus, I think. No, I don't think that's right. But there's a conflict here. There's 3 different accounts of him dying. Jude, one says we don't know. Another says he was killed with an axe. So we have Thomas, Andrew, and Peter that are potentially good. Peter has an epistle. This is one of the earliest. It's a 1st century account by some guy named Clement. But do not dwell upon the ancient examples. Let us come to the most recent spiritual heroes. Something. Peter, through unrighteous envy, endured not 1 but 2 numerous labors, and then suffered a martyrdom, departed to the place of glory due to him. So this is one early account. So Peter is like one of the few that actually works. And then Paul is an interesting one. And you can take a look at these in detail if you want. But the point is that we have over half of the disciples or apostles have like a ton of different conflicts. So this isn't really evidence. And I think we have the closest thing that we can get to actual non-Christian material is Josephus writing that the apostles believed Jesus rose from the dead. And even here it gets sketchy because there are 3 different potential quotes that Josephus wrote down. And so if you look, there is one, like this mediumly suspicious one, talks about did not abandon their loyalty to him. They reported that he had appeared 3 days after his crucifixion. And then there's another one that's like super suspicious. But then this least suspicious one just talks about James and some others. They broke the law and they were delivered to be stoned. So this other one that's super sketchy is here. If it be lawful to call him a man, a teacher of such men received the truth with pleasure. So somebody is, if you read this article, it looks like somebody is trying to make Josephus appear to have said all of these things about how divine and amazing Jesus is. But the problem is that Josephus was not a Christian. So why would he talk about such divine things if he wasn't a believer himself? So this is a strong indicator that this is like embellished or fraudulent by the church. I mean, that's kind of what I get out of this. And I'm not sure how you can, especially when there's three different quotes. So which one is the correct one? So anyway, that's kind of suspicious. And overall, I would say this evidence is medium to weak. I'd actually say it's weak when I consider the three different accounts of Josephus, and because only one of them can be correct. So I would say this martyrdom is weak evidence. So let's look at the potential explanations for the martyrdom evidence. So the first one is the obvious one. They actually died for a real risen Jesus. The other alternative is they died believing that Jesus had risen when really they had just hallucinated, and we'll get to hallucinations later. The other one is Christians wanted to be convincing, so leaders made up stories about how the apostles were martyred. This explains all the conflicting accounts of the apostles' deaths. The other option is Christians heard oral traditions that were changed over time and radically different by the time they were written down. And again, just to drive the point home, all of this martyrdom really proves is that they believed. It doesn't actually prove that Jesus actually rose from the dead. Okay, so we're looking at our list of evidences here, and I have a duplicate, but we've talked about apostles' commitment and then also martyrdom, which is the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those two and see what we have left.